Awesome. So the reading that I really liked this week was the art critique ones. I usually listen to the audiobooks and then like take notes. I don't know, just read along, just so it's like, I don't know, it's like read aloud story time. I like it. But I enjoyed the kind of message, and that like all critical feedback is kind of like subjective, and like what is failure really in the art realm. But then also like I enjoyed the music backgrounds track that she was like reading the list to the music, so that was fun to listen to.
I didn't listen to the audio, so I don't know, didn't know, but I may try check it out to to see.
It was great. It was funny. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
There we go.
Hey guys.
Hello.
How's everyone doing?
Great.
Just another day in the apocalypse.
Yeah. Stressed about deadlines. I have 2 deadlines on Monday and Tuesday. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's never fun to deal with. Well, good luck.
We were just like talking about the readings, and I will record the discussion. So if you want to use the video for your reflection, just message me on Slack, and I will send you the link.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And we were talking about the first reading, and turns out like Karen had a very good music in the audio version of the first reading. So, and
did you listen to the audio version, Corey? I mean, Connor. Sorry.
I didn't. I started with the audio for the Lerman one, but ended up just reading kind of the rest of it.
Nice.
What about you? You guys listen to it?
I mean, I read and listen to it just like to.
Cool.
I don't know. It's kind of like story time-ish.
Yeah,
So,
no, I like it generally for sure.
Yeah. Did she read every word in that passage?
Like it's literally like a read aloud. Like you're listening to like somebody's reading to you, and you're like a kid reading something. I like it. It's very soothing. Wow. It's very nice for my Saturday morning. Just like sit and have somebody read to me and take notes. So yeah.
Yeah, I do it even sometimes on a commute or like going for a run, just listening to it as well. It's a nice way to spend the time.
Yeah, like listening to a real critique.
Right.
Yeah,
hey, Rebecca.
Nice. Hello.
Hi, y'all.
Hey, Rebecca.
How's everybody doing?
We are making it. Just
good. Sorry, what were you guys discussing already? What part?
Like we literally just started right before you came, so
yeah,
not much. And mostly, I was excited about the backing music to one of the readings, so that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
nice. So when you said the first reading, which reading was that? I'm sorry, I don't have the.
I was talking about the art critique.
Readings.
I don't know. I didn't really go in order either. But it was the art critique ones. But what was interesting about, like, I really was drawn to the Why Kids Fail reading, as well as the art, am I saying that right? Art critiques reading. And that, like, the art critiques reading kind of had like a whole bunch of words for like negative criticism and very few words for positive criticism. But then like looking at the words, they were kind of just like subjective, depending on context, and like not really descriptive. And then with the How Children Fail, it's like children were scared of failure, and so like used like find protective mechanisms to protect themselves from failing for whatever reason. And so it kind of made me think about how like that fear might inform criticisms as well. And like, so what is like good work if like we're all kind of just like operating off fear and protecting ourselves from fear, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely limits like creativity. And yeah, I noticed with our critiques that in addition to just not being very clear, the words, a lot of the words were very vague. You know, even when you're talking about words for success, like great and wonderful, right? What does that mean? So just the need to get more specific with the descriptors that we need for feedback.
I also like the how children fail reading. I have two things I resonate. The first one is how children fail. I think the thing that I really resonate is like how your fear influence your strategy for learning. So when you're afraid of like the sentence like I highlight is the like he talks about how children often adopt strategies that are self-productive, aimed above all else at avoiding trouble, embarrassment, punishment, disapproval, or loss of status. And I definitely resonate with that because I feel sometimes, like depending on situations, but there are situations where I'm afraid of the like losing status and then end up taking a route that's not necessarily the best strategy for learning. I think I'm getting better in America, but like when I was in China, I feel that was more salient. And also I resonate with the idea of like when you give praise, I really think I mean like positive, both positive and negative remarks. I think they're more helpful when they're specific, and that's kind of why I like the critical response process. Like she introduced like in the reading, and I think we're probably going to practice that in class, and I'm really looking forward to that because I feel not getting useful feedback is very common in all of my classes because like when you talk to peers are afraid of like hurting you, so they don't provide you they may have some feelings, but they are afraid of like hurting you, and then they don't talk about it. But then I feel like the end result is not the most desirable one. And I also feel like struggling with like sometimes I see other people's things and I want to provide feedback to improve the work, but I'm also worried about like how to provide a feedback that's that's actually like just don't make them feel like it's like a feedback towards them, their person. So I really feel like that's a process that I want to just like practice too, because I feel in words it's kind of like it's still kind of vague. I don't know how it looks like in practice. So I wish that we can do something like that in class and really get some useful feedback for the projects we do.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Thank you for opening up, Javi. Good morning, everybody. You know, you said some really some powerful things, you know, that resonated with me, and also with the reading. There was one particular part in the first reading where it says, you know, are we really training our kids to be, you know, like individual thinkers, or you know, to kind of foster creative thinking, or are we just creating clones of ourselves? So I think I was like, wow, you know, and there's countless feedback sessions I've had with students where I have said, excuse me, where I have said, that's interesting. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I started cringing about all the times that I said, that's interesting, to things that I really don't find interesting, or things that are just kind of superficial. So it got me really thinking about that. And also really wanting feedback. You know, I've been missing some feedback with other classes. And so you know, I definitely, you know, crave that feedback. And I often tell my peers, I'm like, you know, be brutally honest with me. It's not going to hurt my feelings because I want to improve, but I still don't receive it. So I too am excited. Hopefully we will practice this, because this is something that I would love to do with my staff at my school and the students. Because I don't know if anyone has ever done peer review, or not peer review, peer feedback sessions. And I've done it with students in the past. And I've trained them how to give feedback, how to give meaningful feedback, but then it just devolves into just like these superficial comments like, oh, I like the color of your PowerPoint, or you know, your slides are organized, you know, but, and so, you know, I'd have to stop them and coach them again, but it just always devolves into very superficial feedback where it didn't really go anywhere. So I think this is an empowering tool that I would love to work with students and staff to give feedback in multiple different areas, whether it's educational or professional.
Yeah, I totally agree with
so
that.
like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, please. Okay. Yeah, I could really resonate with the part that you said. That's interesting. And one important takeaway from the reading critical response is that about the raising neutral questions. And this is a point where I think that instead of saying that's interesting or any superficial comments like that, we could just try to raise a question, because that will sound still very neutral. And also another takeaway is that when I was looking at these neutral questions, I was surprised that some questions that I thought was neutral was actually not. And I realized the reason for that is maybe I so seldom heard of those neutral questions in my life. Like people are not used to giving feedback in that form. And also speaking of the like why children fail, I think what kind of feedback we receive in life could sometimes determine what kind of feedback we give. So perhaps children are so fear of failing, and that's because when they receive so much feedback or negative feedback, they would also when they're going to be adults, they will also raise that kind of feedback to others. So that's like a vicious cycle, so which is where we should try to break. And this is the biggest takeaway. And another I want to comment on is the poem Blocks to Creativity, which is the last sentence, that the thought of having a truly new idea makes someone automatically a minority. So I was really shocked by that sentence, because it was just so true to me that having some concept new may means that you're different from others. And that is something that we should carefully treasure and pay more attention to like really stress that new idea and probably change it to a change.
Nice. And actually, both yours and Francisco's comment had me thinking about, because I had kind of like cringed to myself when I was reading about the feedback that teachers give. But then at the same time, it seemed as if it was somewhat justifying the feedback on the part of like facilitators, just because it was like kids have these defense mechanisms, right? And like it's kind of already built in. They wanted to blame the education sector, but it was kind of just like these are kind of just how kids are built. And I was wondering like how educators refine their approach to criticism for children, because like on one hand, like kids should get some critique to be able to push forward, but on the other hand, it can't just be like you know, this is not great, this is not that. Like they also need like room to be able to grow and like make mistakes without like it being poo-pooed on, you know. And so like what is the balance of like interesting and like, hey, this needs work for developing.
Actually, I still. Oh, sorry, Rebecca, please.
No, it's good.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just like I actually have questions about the neutral questions and opinionated questions. I actually find the opposite. I feel some questions that appear in the neutral column, I actually feel that like if I listen to them, I would feel like they have some embedded statement that the person is not saying. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes I would prefer people just say, they not say the opinionated questions, but just say what their statement, what their embedded opinion is. Because I find that to be just like a little bit more open. Like I feel like even if you're asking neutral questions, you're changing, you're kind of like framing it that way to kind of like covering up your embedded opinion, which sometimes annoys me when people are trying to do that. Like what's your point? I was like saying, like I would just ask, like, what are you trying to like ask me? Like just directly say it, and we can talk about that more openly. And then some of the questions they are put under the neutral questions, but if I hear it, I think I can guess, I can actually figure out what this person is trying to get me, and I would just feel that's kind of like you're kind of going around, but it doesn't really so and this is actually like an exercise I had in another class. Like when people ask questions, the professor would say, so what's your statement behind your question? And then the person would say the statement. And I actually find that to be very, very, very refreshing, like very, very different. So I want to hear about like what people's opinions about the neutral questions part. And I also want to hear what Rebecca wanted to say previously. Sorry, I cut it off.
Dude, no sorries at all. I love that. Like that was thanks for sharing that. I love that idea of like, what's your statement behind the question? And I think like about how many times in my life I've wanted to like ask somebody that like, what do you actually say? You know what I mean? Like, what are you actually saying? No, I just wanted to share some, like, in response to what a lot of us have been saying about how like the not getting like feedback, because I went to like office hours for Rilda Cassell. She's like the L&T advisor. It was just like a casual hangout. And she was saying how like Hugsy has this reputation for like being so warm and like positive and everyone's so kind. And I'm also enrolled in a class that's with the Kennedy School and the business school. And like, if y'all want feedback, like join a class that is like crossed over with Kennedy, because like we'll role play and people are like, one of the greatest weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. Like they give so I wonder if it's almost like there's this sense that like giving critique is mean, and like Hugsy really has this space of like kind, and like we're all warm and we're all so kind and loving and because in that class like there isn't that same like kind warm thing, and you get this like, and the first time I sat in the class I was like, huh! You know, like it was so like harsh or whatever, but like that really helps with your growth, like to get that kind of feedback and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. Like, I feel like kind of the culture of Hugsy kind of keeps us from giving each other feedback, you know, like we just want to be really nice and kind to each other, but there has to be a way to be nice and kind while also giving, you know, that kind of feedback.
Yeah, definitely. So Rebecca, just going off of your point real quick, there was in the 4 steps for the critical response process is about permission opinions. And that's when like you have to like ask for permission to give like feedback on a certain topic. And it's just like, I don't know, that just doesn't seem very like authentic, right? And it kind of goes to Javi's point about like, if you have kind of something that you want to say, but you're kind of masking it with a question. And in this situation, if you're asking if you can get feedback, and then the artist or the teacher or whoever has the ability to say, no, like I don't want feedback on that, then you're not really, I feel like it's not really an authentic process, right? Then you're like, I only want to hear the feedback that isn't too difficult, that's not too tough. It's only on these 3 aspects, because these other aspects that I don't want feedback on, because I think that they're perfect already, right? That just doesn't seem like a very authentic process to me. And I think it's, you know, we need to think about like what this means for us as adults, but then also what it means for kids, right? And I think kind of like
I'm so
authentic.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Like he just likes to bark. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry.
Fine.
No worries. Like
Just
tough
loves to
feedback.
bark. I'm so sorry, but yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, you can go. He won't bark at you. You can. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
He knows he's not muted.
I'm so sorry, guys. My dog tried to attack a runner. Sorry. I didn't mean to be unmuted.
No worries. No
No
worries.
problem.
I was just going to say for young kids, when we're working, giving kids feedback, I feel like part of the issue is that for so long, the feedback that we've given them is like a measure of their intelligence, right? So it kind of gets to Dweck's conversation about like entity versus incremental. And when you're giving kind of like a numerical rating of someone's intelligence, it can feel like very defeating, right? And I'm homeschooling right now with a couple 5-year-olds, right? And we'll do spelling quizzes, and they'll write out it's just like really cute. They'll like write out like their spelling word, and then like they'll pull like an X next to their word, and they're like, this, I know this is wrong. This is definitely wrong, or like this is a bad drawing that I made. And it's like, guys, like why are we already like naming what we think is bad about our work? Let's use a kind of a positive mindset, because I think they're so often getting feedback about like this is right or this is wrong, instead of like, hey, this looks great. Maybe you can tweak like this, or what do you think you can improve about it? Or what do you think you can do differently? So I think just how do we contextualize feedback with kids at a young age has a huge impact on their receptiveness to feedback later on as adults, right?
That is heartbreaking to hear the X next to the word. Like, I know this is wrong. Like, I know this is bad.
Yeah.
Man, that hurts my heart.
At 5 years old.
At 5. And so then eventually that'll translate to, I'm not even going to put the word down because I know it's like a total disengage. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that just spirals into I'm not going to try. Like the John Holt stuff that we read a few weeks ago of like the student that appears totally disinterested is really just a student that's been told they're wrong over and over.
And Rebecca, this one student, we had a spelling quiz on Friday that's kind of like mandated from their school. And he had 4 of the spellings correct. And then on the 5th spelling, he literally just like misplaced a letter. And I was trying to help him along to think what could have changed about that letter. And he couldn't get to what the correct letter should be. And he started breaking down during it. And I said, hey, buddy, like this is not something that you should be beating yourself up over, right? This is an opportunity to kind of to learn. Like we all make mistakes. I said, the other day, they saw that I had to look up the correct spelling for a word on Google, and they're like, what, you don't know how to spell that? And I was like, yeah, like even adults sometimes needs to like make mistakes. It's okay. So just trying to normalize like the mistakes are okay, that like getting like constructive feedback is okay, and that it's not always a right or wrong, right?
I have found so much this class, I feel like has taught me so much about that. So when my students do like 5 or 10 minutes of independent reading at the beginning of class, before we do like our reading strategy practice, I read with them. Like I'll sit at a table and I'm reading with them. And now that I'm in grad school, it's what I have to read for grad school. Like there's no like pleasure reading happening, but and then I'll imitate a reading strategy. And I'll be like, oh, like I got to the word pejorative. Like I had to look that up. And they're like, you had to look it up? And I'm like, and they'll be like, but you're at Harvard. Like, why do you have to look up words? And I'm like, I don't know every word. Even words I use sometimes, I don't really know what their definition is. I just know how they're used. Like, but it's been so powerful for them to like see that, like to see what you described. Like, I think that it's one thing for us to say to them, like, it's okay to make mistakes. And then it's a totally different thing for them to see us struggle and fall and keep going. You know, I think that's really powerful.
Sure.
Yeah, I also wonder, like, actually, I'm thinking of like adults and children. Maybe like the neutral questions work better for children, like because like I feel like adults tend to think about the under, like what's under what's being said. But for children, they may not. They may like the neutral questions may invite them to really think about their process and their decisions, because they're not trying to figure out what you're implying under that. But I also feel like it's very interesting how we kind of equate feedback with like being like a kind of like a bad work. And I definitely see that. I feel like even when I see like the comments I get for my assignments, like if they say something I need to change, I feel like sometimes that implies like my work may not be exactly the work that they would like to have, but it can it doesn't really have to mean that way, but I just feel like it does have that kind of like connotations. Like if you need feedback, then you're not really doing it the best work. But there is really like no best work. You can always do better and better, and I feel that's something that like it's like there is an end, like there is the highest level that you can achieve. I feel that idea is really defeating in terms of like it makes like having feedback means needing feedback means you're not achieving the highest possible like the line, but there is actually no such line. You can always improve, and I feel that's just that like I feel like I don't know how to change it, but I feel that's kind of like very limiting in terms of like having like seeking improvement in yourself in your work.
Right. Yeah. To your point, like especially for adults, I feel like that's why adult learning is a lot more difficult, and like they're just trying to find new approaches to like do it effectively. Just because like adults are set in their ways, they've been conditioned in a certain way, and more than likely, like they don't want to look deficient because they're grown-ups. And so like and I was an administrator for a couple of years, and like having to give feedback to like move adults along like the spectrum was like I'm gonna have to find another word for to other than interesting, because now that I'm just saying like I want to say everything's interesting. Like, what's that? but like the way that they trained us to give feedback is not a way that I enjoy getting feedback. They kind of like made it like I like to call it a glow sandwich, where like you say something like really positive, right? And then like the real critique was like in the middle of the bun, the meat. And then like you ended with really positive. And so like, they know what they have to do, but like they're doing all the great things they have to do, right? And so it's like really just like kind of tiptoeing around like the adult ego and be like, no, you just have this one thing where it's just like I used to tell my manager all the time, I'm just like, hey, just give me the meat. I don't care for that. Like I know I'm okay. Like I know I'm pretty good. I'm not incompetent. Just like give me what I need to grow on. But I always got pushback on that because like I just want to be able to tell you the good things you're doing, so it doesn't seem as if like you're just doing poorly. And so it's like it's the way different people's minds work, and that's like some people might know the good things they're doing, just like to tell me how to improve, and other people might be completely defeated by just getting that criticism and like not having anything else good acknowledged.
That's really thought provoking. Trying to use different synonyms.
Yes, perfect.
Or enlightening. So there really was thought provoking, and I went to the reading, and I thought about how one of the first step, or one of the first things before the 4 steps, was to build trust and like that community piece. So I think that's incredibly important, because then you can kind of almost massage out, I guess, or you can kind of eliminate ulterior motives behind some of those neutral questions. So I think it's incredibly important, whether it's this reading group. I feel that, let's see, if we were to give each other feedback, we would respond to it really well, rather than someone we've never met in the class and be like, oh, this is what you need to do, and be kind of like, hey, I don't even know you. So do you know where I'm coming from? Do you know my background? So I think it's incredibly important, and I would love for you guys to kind of add what you think about that. As my dog starts to attack other runners.
I like what both of you said there. First about just kind of like relationship building is so important in order to be able to give authentic feedback, right? And to George's point, it feels just kind of like fake, right? When you're like giving like this little glow in order to get to the meat of the constructive feedback that you want to give, right? But if you can really build a legitimate relationship where there's trust, and you both respect each other, then you can give the glows when there are glows, and you can give the constructive feedback when there is constructive feedback. Sometimes we try to kind of just hide behind words instead of being real with people. But I think it really gets down to if you know your teachers that that you're managing, if they know you really well, then I feel like there's going to be greater trust in that relationship.
So it reminds me of something I read for another class. I think maybe Connor, you're in that class as well, the deeper learning class. And
yeah,
like they talk about how like it's like think of the trust as like I don't know if this is a good idea, but he's like the author. She's basically arguing that I think of trust as like a bank, and then you if you give people affirmations, give them support, and that's kind of like you put money into the bank, and then when you need to challenge people to go out of their comfort zone, or if you really need to like have a harder talk to them to help them realize some of their unconscious bias, then you're drawing out of things from that bank. And so the thing is like you have to like the what she wants to say is just like you have to be more like people have to be more intentional about providing a support and affirmation in daily lives, so that when it comes to the time that you need to have a hard conversations, you have that trust there. And she also mentioned something like the positive like affirmation and like support versus like the ratio of like affirmation support versus challenging talk, or like hard conversations is like 3 to 5 affirmation support, and then you have like 1 challenging or like hard conversations. I find that to be a little bit less like manipulative than the sandwich, because like I feel the sandwich can sometimes people kind of know what you're trying to do, and I feel this kind of like the trust, like thinking of trust as like a bank, is less like it still sounds a little bit strategic and manipulative, but I feel it's actually like it will kind of push you to provide more affirmation support in like in other conversations, in daily life situations.
This kind of just makes me. Oh, sorry. Who was that? Rebecca? No, who was talking? I can't see. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, go
just
ahead.
want to
Sorry.
make one short comment. Yeah, just to add on the, I really like the metaphor of bank, and it reminds me of another idea that I learned in a course in developmental psychology, which is resilience. And people sometimes tend to think resilience as a personal trait, but actually it has a lot of to do with the context and the environment, whether one has healthy relationship or positive support from the community could largely influence someone's resilience. And yeah, and I think how someone could receive negative comments also is like that kind of model. Depends on how many positive comments he has received in the past. And also I think the reason of the like the mentioning of this critical response process idea is that because it's in the context of art industry, and I think art creation is somewhat a more subjective kind of work, and also perhaps art critics are often more harsh, and yeah, they just make comments on whatever they want. And it reminds me of a book that I recently know about. It's called Nonviolence Communication, and he said the first step for nonviolence communication is to differentiate between observations and comments. So when you try to give a feedback, you could first mention an observation, which is a fact. Like if you want to say someone's performance is too long, you could say that your performance is 2 hours. And then I think this works somewhat like the neutral question that brings you and the receiver to the same level of this topic. And then you could show your comment or a idea, which they could choose to accept or not.
This made me think of like all of this is kind of dictated by context and like I guess the context that you're like raised in, and like how and not just like basically family, but like I don't know, the larger context. Because even thinking about us at Hugsy, right? Like coming into Hugsy, at least for me, it initially I felt like there was some expectation that like, I'm at Harvard, this work has to just be and so like I was like hesitant to like see other people's work compared to mine, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I haven't been in school in 10 years, and like what if things have changed, and like am I smart enough, and like, and so like there's all this like internal monologue that's like I don't know if you can like necessarily escape, no matter what type of like upbringing you had, just because of like the context that like we're experiencing is like as people. And so it's like all these interventions is kind of trying to like fight against the structure that's ingrained in us, depending on like just where we grew up and what our society ends up valuing. Because regardless of what our family's experiences is, those values end up like pushing through based on just the sheer weight and pervasiveness of the society that we're in.
Thank you for sharing, George. And excuse me. And I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right. Yanji.
Yes. Yeah.
So what I thought about, and maybe to not sound so not necessarily abstract, but kind of kitschy, this got me thinking about, if you guys heard of like love languages, they have another version for the workplace. So it's like words of appreciation. So you have like words of affirmation, quality time. I wonder if like another remix could be made about how you like to receive and give feedback. So like having, let's say with a coach or with a colleague, have a time where you guys sit down and be like, well, so how do you like to receive feedback? Where are you coming from? What's your background? And then, kind of decipher how they like to receive feedback and how you like to give feedback. So I don't know what you guys think. Again, I don't want to sound too kitschy, but maybe that's something that could be created. I don't know.
I'm surprised something like that doesn't exist, because every organization I've been at has done like the long love languages, like how do you like to be communicated? But I guess that speaks to how feedback is viewed and valued in workplaces. Like it's a nice thing, but like to actually have it as a centerpiece of like work might just be too serious.
Yeah, but I appreciate what you guys are saying about the need for feedback to be just contextualized in terms of your background and your values and your culture and your upbringing, right? I mean, so much of kind of like how you perceive feedback is how you had feedback conversations with your parents and with your teachers, right? And that's very contextualized and that's very different for every person. So, and that's kind of like where relationship building becomes very helpful, right? Because you get to know that person a lot better, how they respond to certain conversations. So it's got to, I think there's no like one size fits all. It's got to be different for every single person. And Z, to your point about, the 4-step process, the critical response process being kind of like more towards art. I mean, for education, I mean, a lot of education is artistic. You represent your ideas artistically, right? Probably more so in the humanities, but that can also be more in the STEM classes as well. So I really wonder how this process could be applied to giving both students and teachers feedback, and how comfortable people would be to having responders present. And I guess that happens in some capacity in classrooms, right? When a student's presenting their work, I think some teachers give students space to respond to the work that their classmate is presenting, which I think is really helpful, especially when the teacher isn't the sole possessor of feedback, right? When you make it more of a kind of like a communal, collective process, I think that's really helpful.
I think it also applies to design, just like not just like arts, but like any design work that you can use the process, and I don't know if I have to try the process to see if I will like the neutral questions part, but I like having an observation combined plus comment, because I feel that taps onto both the observation and comments, so I don't have to guess what's the person's opinion behind the person's like comment, like what the person says. So I like that more than the neutral questions alone. And I feel like I just want to say something about the context, the influence of context, because I had a very interesting experience. I had peer critiques with kind of like twice, and I feel like there are 2 times when I had peer critics that actually I find something very interesting. It's like one time when I had a peer critic, and then the comments is all mainly about where he sees like I can improve or I can change. And the other time when I was have a peer critic, the person comments along the document and provides like it has both like the positive parts and the negative part. And I find that to be very helpful to me, like because when I see the combined positive and negative parts, I feel that this person is just like commenting what she sees in my document and along the way. And it feels very nice to have that like comments like along the, like instead of just like a big comment like in the end, like she actually has like comments along the process, along the document. But then when I talk to other people about the first peer critic process I had, like my friend says like maybe just like people don't think that they need to give any positive like comments, because like they already think that you just need the, like they're just trying to provide the comments that you need, so they only gave comments on the parts that they see need changes, which is the things that you need to change after the peer critic process. And I just feel that's very similar to what my parents say to me. Like they would always say like, if I don't see any big problems, I won't talk to you about them. I only talk to you when I see a big problem in you. But I'm like, why don't you talk to me when you see something good, you know? And then it's like the culture thing. Like my parents just don't think like, if we're doing good, why do we need to talk to you? You don't need to change anything. So I just feel like the culture has a really strong influence on how we see, like how much we value positive feedback, like providing positive feedback to other people. Like everyone likes positive feedback to ourselves, but what about giving positive feedback to other people? Is it like unnecessary, or is it actually helping other people, at least providing them like this is the thing that they're doing good, so maybe they will have more they will be more intentional about keeping that part. So I definitely feel the power of like a culture and like context, how that influence our behaviors.
Kind of like to Giabi's point, I think something that I'm learning is like the value of like me not holding any opinion about someone else's work, be it positive or negative, but just seeking to ask questions that, because as a teacher with my high schoolers, it's like I really want them to be thinking more critically about the decisions that they made. Like, why did I put this sentence here? Why did I think this was the best word for this? Like, I feel like that's how learning like happens. And so I've been trying to get away from like any kind of positive or negative like feedback, specifically on their writing, like not all the time, but something on the writing, and just like ask questions that kind of like puts it back on them to like think about like, how did I come to this, and like how, you know. And I think like, and then also I started a few years ago requiring my students to respond to questions that I put in their writing, because I feel like something that's so frustrating as a teacher is like when you write all this feedback on their writing and then like it's in the garbage can or like it goes in their folder and you're like, did you read all my amazing critiques? Like they were life-changing. Like why didn't you know, like, but just like pick 2 questions that I posed and like reflect on them so that there is this like ownership of the like, there is this dialogue and this like learning that happens out of the, you know, the critique or whatever. I think that's something that I'm learning how to do and how to be better about doing.
Yes, thank you for sharing, Rebecca. You know, I was kind of the same way. Gave so much detailed feedback in a red pen on the margins, underlining, and the kids would just not look at it because maybe they were overwhelmed or they just didn't care, or who knows. So it was a game changer when I just switched to you know, not giving feedback like that and just having points that you know, I refer to maybe like almost on a rubric and be like, and then ask questions. And going through the IB, you know, being an IB teacher really can't speak this morning, really has pushed me to ask those questions, because when you're working with students on projects, you can only give them like feedback on a full draft. So throughout the process, all you can do is just ask general questions like, what was the theme of this? Or are you sure you, or, you know, why did you choose that? So it really pushed me to give better feedback, but still I was, you know, kind of stuck in this same kind of, you know, in my schema of giving feedback. And so with the reading, you know, it got me thinking, you know, to really interrogate how, you know, I learned to give feedback. So like going through my educational experience, you know, as a teacher and student, you know, how I was giving feedback growing up. So, you know, to not be so, you know, hard on myself on why I'm giving feedback the way I am, because it's, you know, it's a product of the I guess the foundational, you know, work that was done, giving feedback to me as a student. So, but I'm so thankful for these readings because again, it allows me to interrogate those, like the impetus of why I do certain things.
I was just typing this in the chat, but since we got a moment of silence here, I guess I'll add it verbally. But I really liked Rebecca's idea of having students respond to your feedback. And I think, again, ideally you'd be having conversations with students when you can kind of, you know, go back and forth about their thoughts, you know, why they said certain things, why they answered a problem in a certain way. Time is certainly an issue. But even having students reflect on their work and reflect on your feedback by writing, it definitely seems like a very helpful tool. And something that I think I want to try to bring to my work more often.
I have another class that's also project based, and like we have these iteration cycles, and like the rounds call for like feedback. But we're really encouraged to not respond to the feedback because they're like your initial reaction or response is going to try to be like to explain, like you know why that happens the way it happened, or it's like why it is shaped the way it's shaped. When like the purpose of feedback is kind of just like to take it in and apply what you can apply, and just like continue iterating with the feedback, whether it's good, positive, applies, doesn't apply. Because then when you are responding to feedback, you're less likely to get the quality feedback because you're kind of just like answering the question that the person's asking, and like and saying like, and your response the critiquer's response is going to be, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense now, and they're going to be less likely to give something that will push the project. So,
That's so interesting, George, because like, oh, sorry. I didn't mean to say. But that reminds me of the Lerman text where she's like I always felt like if I responded to feedback, I was like crossing a boundary. Like the response to feedback is to like shut up and take, you know what I mean? Like that, you know, so it's so interesting. I don't know what the proper dynamic is there. Cause you're right. Like if someone then explains to me that I as the feedback giver, I'm kind of like, oh, okay. But at the same time, you want there to be dialogue. To Connor's comment and also statement in the chat, like the reason why I had my kids reflect is because there was no dialogue about our writing. Like it was me, the like secret keeper of all things written. And I was evaluating and determining the worth. And there was like never any dialogue. And like, I've been learning so much, like we have to actively create a culture in our classrooms of like how to dialogue. Like our kids don't explicitly know this. Like they don't know what it looks like to dialogue, or if it's safe to dialogue, kind of again to Lerman's point of like what that boundary looks like. Can I respond? Can I ask? And like, it's really challenging and really meta to like kind of figure out like how to help create like that space where we're dialoguing and we're all learning and we're sharing, you know, like that's, I don't know. I'm still learning how to do that, but I want to be able to do that. And I'm still like always trying to find, like curious about finding ways to create that space, you know?
And I think a lot of times people aren't very good at giving feedback. And Lerman talked a lot about how critiques, even positive, felt like a lightning rod for unspoken ideas, values, and assumptions, and like trying to create like a clone of like yourself. And I feel like a lot of times we do that. We take someone's work and we use our background and our experience and our perspective way too much and have that influence the feedback that we're giving. And sometimes I think the dialogue can be helpful and giving an exchange and just like understanding someone else's point of view. But then also I think that's why it's so beneficial to have collective feedback, right? From your peers, from your teacher, even from yourself, right? Self-reflection, so that you're not only hearing one voice in terms of your feedback, but you're getting a variety of different perspectives and values and assumptions. And ideally, right, we're holding those back, but just understanding how like a collective general audience receives your work rather than one person, the sole possessor of knowledge, as so often is kind of like the teachers painted as.
Yeah, I think so we're getting close to an end now. It's like so I really like the conversation, and I try to, I don't know how much time, like every time I need to structure, because sometimes I feel like we have fewer readings, but actually the topic is very rich. So I like that I like the conversation we had today, and it definitely makes me think about how I should give, like in terms of like giving students feedback. I think that's really challenging in terms of especially like how to, like, not just like give them feedback and then they never think about it, but actually providing them feedback that push them to think about their work, and also like not trying to impose how, like what I think is them. I feel that's just like a very hard thing to do, like hard thing to balance. So that's like my last thoughts, and I just want to thank everyone for coming to discuss. I know everyone's probably very busy at this time, like we only have like 1 month or something left. Yeah, and I know I think we're going to do our project prototype on this week, so that's why I kind of didn't do the, like last week we talked about like having like a introduction talking about each other's project, but I think like, because since we're going to have project prototype soon, so I think maybe we can like get something out of that in our small sessions. So that's why I kind of keep having, like I started with the reading discussion, and I hope that everyone finds the conversation, like discussion a little bit relaxing in terms of having all the assignments. Yeah, so thank you all for coming. And
yes, thank you for organizing it, Jabi. I really look forward to it. I didn't think I was going to make it today, but I'm so glad I was able to speak with you guys. It always, starts my day off in a really productive manner. So I thank you. Thank you guys for sharing the space with us. And I look forward to seeing what you guys have as far as your prototypes this week. It's going to be really cool. And let me know if you need any critical response. I'd be happy to provide it for you guys.
Agreed. Thanks, everyone. Javi, thanks so much for putting it together. Really enjoyed the conversation, and we'll love to do it again.
yeah, bye everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.